We started this morning just by explaining once again the angelic conflict and the fact that we now believe that there is a final battle, an important battle that's fought between Lucifer and Christ. And that particular battle was fought on the cross. It's not that there won't be other battles to come, large scale of battles like Armageddon and Gog and Magog 2 and those type deals. But the real point of the angelic conflict is to pit Lucifer against Christ, not as God against angel, but angel against man. And not just against man in his strongest state. He already did that with Adam. Adam was a perfect man. There were no weaknesses, nothing, in the garden, and yet he simply conquered him like that, in a twinkling of an eye, it seemed. But with Jesus Christ, it was different. He was battered, bruised. He had already been up all night, very little food and water, beating after beating. He'd been on the cross 3 hours, and now he's going to face 3 more hours when God the Father turned all the lights out. And he ushered a challenge, and we'll see that challenge to Lucifer to come and fight with him there on the cross. And so it was will against will, power against power, creature against creature in Christ's state as a human being, and he still won. But now we brought you back to the fact that the main objective of Lucifer is to sit in the very throne that Christ as God sat in at the right hand of the Father. He wants to be like the Most High, and Jesus Christ is the highest delegated authority, the possessor of heaven and earth. And so therefore, Lucifer wants to do the very same thing. But the interesting thing about that, it's not just heaven and the landmass, but it's also the seas. And all of this has to be factored in as we're studying these things, because then we understand the 3 animals that Lucifer uses as models to conquer Jesus Christ. First is King of the beasts, the lion. Then King of all creature subtlety, the serpent. And then the King of the seas. And it's not the whale, as you would think, and it's not even just your normal run-of-the-mill dinosaur. It's none other than a creature that the Bible calls Leviathan, who has many heads. Now the important thing about these 3 creatures is that what Lucifer does is he rolls them all up together into one, and he then pictures himself, and this is a mythical beast, but it's nonetheless true in that it represents the Lucifer, and that is the dragon. And we see then in Revelation that the dragon is pictured there. Reference is made to his grip that he has. Reference is made to his tail. Reference is made to the fact that he is like Leviathan and has many heads, 7 heads. And the dragon also could fly. So you've got lion's claws, a serpent's tail, Leviathan as a sea creature, wings, and they're all combined in this great red dragon. Now, God, through his Son, Jesus Christ, is going to deal with all of these creatures. But one of the things that we're doing first, before we see how these creatures play a factor on the cross, is take a look at them. And that's what we did. Each one, the lion, the serpent, Leviathan, and then as the dragon. And what we're going to do is show that God has already wounded the dragon, and he's wounded him in specific instances, historical events, and especially on the cross, and then in all finality when he places him in the lake of fire. So here we are in Isaiah 27. And this is pretty much looking toward the end times. In the day, the Lord with his sore and great and strong sword shall punish Leviathan, the piercing serpent, the one who plies the waters. Even Leviathan, the crooked serpent, the one who is associated, his tail is associated with the serpent of Eden. And he shall slay the dragon that is in the sea. But now, what we are contending here is that it's not just any sea that's spoken of, that it is the Red Sea. that is maybe, now I'm not saying this as a fact, but maybe the Red Sea got its name because of this red dragon from ancient times. Because we believe that's where Leviathan lives, or lived at one time, and his counterpart, Lucifer, lives there. Now, while we're in Isaiah, therefore, let's turn to chapter 51. Chapter 51 and verse number 9. It says, "The arm of the Lord is to awake, as in the ancient days." Now, there are hundreds of years of history that have passed since the ancient days referred to by Isaiah. And so he's looking back and he's saying, God, I want you to do now what you did back then. Now, he's pointing to a specific instance, and that's going to play a real part here in our study tonight in just a little bit. And the specific instance is when God wounded the dragon in the place where he lived. And I don't know about you, but as I was talking with Dan Yancey here, it's fascinating. And as a matter of fact, it's really quite humorous, and I will explain in just a little bit. He says, in the generations of old, when you cut Rahab, now this is an instance where Rahab is referred to as Egypt, or as a symbol of Egypt. He really cut to the heart of the Egyptians. And then they got their armies, their massive armies with the charioteers and their warriors, and began chasing them in the wilderness to the point of the Red Sea. But God led them there for a specific reason. And it said, he wounded the dragon. When he dried the sea, the waters of the great deep, and have made the depths of the sea a way for the ransomed to pass over. Now that's a significant statement, because we will show from the scriptures that that's where one of the main gates to the netherworld, the main gates to the depths of the earth with its compartments. You've got Tartarus, which is the compartment for the fallen angels. You've got torments for unbelievers. And you've got paradise, which was still occupied at this time. Paradise is for Old Testament believers who are in the heart of the earth until Jesus Christ led captivity captive. And that's the whole point of this. The crossing of the Red Sea is going to be taken as a precedent for when Jesus Christ led his people out of that place through the gates of hell, which did not prevail against them, keeping them there. He loosed the prisoners of Satan, who had the keys of that place, and took them then to the third heaven. And so all of this is picturing them, but he wounded the dragon at this point. In the Koel stem, it means God did this intentionally. So he intentionally wounded him. How? Kalal says, by disrespecting his person. He didn't consult with Leviathan before he opened the Red Sea and exposed his headquarters, his living quarters. He didn't ask permission to traipse 2 million people, profaning this thing, just treating it as common. 2 million people, causing dust to flow. He got his furniture dirty. He profaned the palaces, the living quarters of Leviathan at this point. And that hurt him. Now, one of the things that he's doing here is showing that God can deal with Leviathan. We learned in Job that it doesn't matter if you've got a harpoon, a spear, a lance, arrows, probably take an atomic bomb. When this creature is big and massive, he is armor-plated with his scales. Nothing can penetrate. Nothing's going to hurt him. And a mere man cannot deal with Leviathan. But God can deal with him. And somebody who was a unique man dealt with him, Jesus Christ. And what God did was wound him. He stirred him up. He made him mad. And Leviathan couldn't do a thing about it. Okay, let's take a look then by turning back to Job 26, and I'm going to just give a little more commentary on some of the first times that God wounded Leviathan. Job 26. And I think we need to understand this, and we kind of went fast over it this morning so we could get to some other things and conclude it and have it make sense. But verse number 12 says that God divided the sea with his power. And by his understanding then, by doing this, he understood that he was going to smite through the proud. Now, while we're in Job, I would remind you that that's what God called Leviathan, king of the children of pride. And so this is a direct assault on Leviathan and once again, his territory. Now, what happened? Let's go to Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1 and verse 9. The original earth was two parts, water and landmass. It was not broken up into the continents as we now have it. And that's what's said here. Verse 9, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place. So on one side was water, and let the dry land appear on the other side. And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the water he called seas. And this has to do with the fact that though there's one ocean, there are also currents and that in the ocean that are considered seas or more minor bodies of water, though it can be used interchangeably. So we come then to chapter 10 of Genesis. Now you're familiar with the story in Genesis chapter 10 where there is still one landmass. When God had the flood, the waters just simply covered over the landmass and then receded back into their place. It was still one landmass. And so you have all of the nations that were represented here at the Tower of Babel. There was one speech, one language, one people, one government, one religion, on and on. So God is going to now strike at the heart of Leviathan. He's going to strike the dragon, Satan. Now, how is he going to do this? Well, undoubtedly, Leviathan had his headquarters in the sea. And he was causing all of the nations of the world. And by the way, what is the Bible symbol for the overflowing nations? Large bodies of water or an ocean or a sea and that sort of thing. God uses that as a symbol of the nations. And so, Nimrod gathers them all together at the Tower of Babel and goes contrary to God saying, scatter. That was part of the Noahic commission, to scatter to the four corners of this continent and begin multiplying. But they didn't do it. So, note verse 32. These are the families of the sons of Noah after their generations in their nations, and by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. So you have from the three sons of Noah, all of the nations potentially there. But because of what they were doing, God came and confused their languages and scattered them. Once they got to their particular locale, God did something else that wounded the dragon, according to Job. What was that? Verse number 25. Unto Eber were born two sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided. So God broke up the continents, and according to Job, he divided the seas. Now, this king of the sea creatures, this king of the sea, could no longer just control this one large body of water. He now was confined. He now had to make his way around the continents, and he now was stuck as to his living quarters in a smaller body of water called the Red Sea. Now, if you can imagine having this large ocean, they say, we'll call it like the Atlantic. And then all of a sudden now, because God broke up the continents, and God broke up the nations and Satan's plan, he now is confined. Leviathan is confined to the Red Sea. And that wounded him. That made him mad. He no longer is the great king of the sea as he once was. He's got a smaller portion where he lives. So, let's go from here then, back to Isaiah 51. And in Isaiah 51, we're going to drop down and see some verses beneath the ones we just considered. Isaiah 51, we're starting with verse number 13. Now, remember, these are in the immediate context of the verses 9 and 10 that we just read, where God wounded the dragon when he took Israel through the Red Sea. All right, verse 13. You forgettest the Lord your Maker, that stretched out the heavens and the earth, that laid the foundations of the earth. You feared continually every day because of the fury of the oppressor, as if he were ready to destroy. And where is the fury of the oppressor? Now this is a reference to Satan in his anti-Semitism. So that now the captive is a word that's referring to Israel. They were slaves in Egypt. They were captives there. Now, the captive exile hasteneth. God told Israel, whenever I kill the firstborn, when you eat the Passover in the evening, you eat it with your shoes on, your clothes on, and your staff. Why? Because by morning, I want you to get out of there. Get moving, because I'm going to free you from the bondage of Egypt. And God had an ulterior motive. He is going to lead them directly to the point in the Red Sea where Leviathan is, in the heart of that sea. In the depths of the sea, there is Leviathan. But not only is Leviathan there, it is the point where there is the major opening to Hades, the major opening to hell. And he's not going to allow Israel to drop into hell. Leviathan is going to be thwarted again. So, the captive exile hasteneth that he may be loosed, that he should not die in the pit. Note, nor that his bread should fail. Now, what's the significance here of this? It is two events in sequence. Three events, actually. The exile from Egypt, going through the Red Sea, and then the manna on the other side. That's what it is. So if you take these as three sequential events as they happened historically, they're coming out of Egypt, the Exodus, going through the Red Sea, and then getting the manna, the bread that did not fail for 40 years on the other side. What is the event in the Red Sea that this verse is talking about? Crossing over the pit. Where does the pit have to be, therefore? In the middle of the Red Sea. That's where it has to be. And that is the beauty of this event. And I had never seen this before until it began to dawn on. Well, that's absolutely what it's talking about. The seas parted, and there's the gate of hell, and Leviathan thought, that's okay, let him go over. I'll just open the doors and drop him right down there, alive into the pit. But God did some things we'll see in a moment. Excuse me for getting a little excited. I do, from time to time, show up an emotion or two. Where am I? This happened, therefore, verse 15, he reminds them, I am the Lord that divided the sea, whose waves roared. Now, what does that have to do with anything? Doesn't every sea have waves that roar? Let's go back here to Job again. Chapter 41. Job here, chapter 41. And you'll note verse number 31. Here's the significance as to why he said, I divided the sea and the waves roared. He is a reference to Leviathan. Remember the whole chapter we read this morning. Leviathan makes the deep to boil like a pot. What did he do when he split the Red Sea and prevented Israel from dropping into hell? He angered Leviathan. He wounded Leviathan. I want to get God if it's the last thing I do. And it began to bubble up. The waves were roaring there. Not just because God had blasted with his nostrils and rebuked the sea. It now was roaring because Leviathan had the people of God in his grasp and he couldn't do a thing about it. God had congealed the walls of the water so that Leviathan could not get in there, and the people of God were protected. All right, where are we? Last part of verse 31. He makes the sea like a pot of ointment. In other words, bubbling. It's on fire. And so that's why God gives this sequence and then reminds them, when I divided the sea, the waves were roaring there. Why? Because Leviathan was mad. He was having him a double, triple, royal hissy fit, and he could not do a thing about it, but he wanted to. Okay, now, I guess one of the first things that we need to do, we're going to come back here and look at some other verses in Job and in some other places, but let's go first to the book of Numbers chapter 16. Now we're going to show you an example of what in actuality was on Leviathan's mind when Israel was on the Red Sea. He was going to drown them and just take them straight down into the pit, which he had the keys of. Lock them there as his prisoners. Now, this is not the normal way God allows people to go into the pit. So it's called a new way, or new in that it's unique or different. But here are some people that are going to drop into the pit physically alive. They're just going to drop down, it's going to open up, and they're going to go into the pit. So, Numbers 16, verse 28. Moses said, Hereby ye shall know that the Lord hath sent me to do all these works, for I have not done them of mine own hand. He's called and ordained of God. If these men, it has to do with Korah and some others and those of his household who wanted to be priests, but he was not called. He was not of the right family, in other words, and God had called Aaron. So he said, if these men die a common death of all men, or if they be visited after the visitation of men, then the Lord has not sent me. I mean, if they're going to croak and it's just a natural death, then mark it down, God didn't send me. But if the Lord does a new thing, now this is new in its uniqueness. The normal way that God puts people into the center of the earth is that the one who has the key opens the gates and people are taken down there. All right. The earth opens her mouth and swallows them up and all that pertain to them, and they go down quick into the pit. Now, can you imagine a great stratagem of Lucifer as Leviathan? Here is the Red Sea, and he's going to drown them, but now it all of a sudden opens up right over the main gate. And here's all of Israel, and he wants to get rid of any future plans God has with this nation. Every single Jew on the planet was represented in that group that left from Egypt. There wasn't another Jew anywhere on the planet, but in that they estimate some 2 million people. And here 2 million people are being chased by Pharaoh and his men behind them. And the Red Sea in front of them now opened up, and there is the gate of the pit. What could he have done? He could have, caused a panic. And here they're running, and they're going choo, 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 right down there into the pit, just like these guys are going to do. And that was what made him so excited. Yes. Come on, yes, oh God, you did me a favor, open the Red Sea. And he's just getting so excited because he can end it all right there. Every Jew is dead just like that. They're afraid to go back. Pharaoh's going to get them, and they've got to go ahead, but ahead of them is the pit. All right, so if they go down quick into the pit, then you'll understand that these men have provoked the Lord. And it came to pass, as he has made an end of speaking all these words, that the ground clave asunder. Now remember, this wasn't the normal way, but it pictures what Leviathan wanted. The ground clave asunder that was under them. The earth opened her mouth and swallowed them up, and their houses, and all that pertained to them, and all their goods. And all that pertained to them went down alive into the pit. Now that was what Leviathan was hoping for. That to get all these Jews and end the angelic conflict like that, because God could not have fulfilled his promise to the Jews if every single one of them were killed in that historic event. And so they perished from among the congregation because, last part of verse 34, the earth swallowed them up, and the others didn't want to be swallowed as well. So let's go back then to Exodus 13. And we're going to see here that that's what God had in mind all along. And in actuality, he is going to do a reversal. Now, some of the verses that we're going to be reading and some of the things I'm going to say may not make sense to you right at this moment, because I'm going to comment on them as fact. But it's going to take us another study before we get the significance of the depths of the sea and this spot and what it means. But we're going to, because of our time and the nature of this, you'll just have to bear with me. But we will get there, and it will be meaningful to you. Verse 18. God led the people about through the way of the wilderness of the Red Sea. The children of Israel went up harnessed out of the land of Egypt. In other words, they had all of their earthly goods and possessions on them when they left. And even those things that they spoiled the Egyptians on. So now, verse number 2. God speaking to Moses said, "Tell the children of Israel that they turn and encamp by the sea." Verse 2. Encamp by the sea. Now, all this time we're thinking, now this has been me, and I've been in this business for a long time. I've been thinking that he's just going to show his mighty power and bring him through. Now, that's not insignificant. Time and again, God refers to the Red Sea as an event that the people of Israel need to look back to, because he delivered them and wrought a great deliverance. But what we're saying is there's more to it than that. There is greater significance to God bringing them to this point in the Red Sea than is what we've understood before. So, Pharaoh's going to say, they're entangled in the land, the wilderness has shut them up, I'll harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will follow after them. Now that's the point. Now, all along though, Lucifer behind the scenes is saying, hey, fine. We'll get rid. We'll either bring them back to Egypt, drown them in the Red Sea, or when the sea opened up, I'm going to really solve this problem by plopping them right down into the pit. So, as the story goes, he's got all of his soldiers. Verse 7. He took 600 chosen chariots, all the chariots of Egypt, captains over every one of them. The Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he pursued after the children of Israel. And it's especially because he embarrassed them, last part of verse 8, because Israel went out with a high hand. Now, that simply is the high five. Hey, bro, we've done one. We're getting out of here. And that's what it means. And the other team was lost and has been humiliated. And so Pharaoh says, boy, he's just seething and steaming, and he's going to get these Egyptians back or kill them in the Red Sea. So we've got all of these players, God and Moses, Israel, Pharaoh here, and all of it, Lucifer. And when they come to the sea, Leviathan, his character Leviathan, begins to act out. So now they go through here, and the Israelites say, we're going to die. We're going to die right here. Why did you do this? At least we had a home and a measure of food in Egypt, though we were slaves. What did Moses say? Fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. He's going to show you this day. Because the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. Now, I used to think, in reading this, it was just because they were drowned. And of course, that's part of it, yes. But there's more significance in that what Leviathan was planning for Israel, God did to the Egyptian soldiers. And you'll see it. What Leviathan was planning for Israel, to open the gates and put Israel in there, God drowned the Egyptians, and evidently through a whirlpool or what have you, he drew them right to the point of the pit, and body and soul, they dropped down in there. Okay, you're not going to see him again forever. The Lord's going to fight for you. Wherefore do you cry unto me? Let's move forward. So he stretched out his rod over the sea and divided it, and the children of Israel went over on dry ground, through the midst of the sea. And he hardened Pharaoh's heart so that they would pursue after him, and that goes the whole story. So that Israel went through and up and over. Pharaoh came to pursue, and in the midst of the sea, God told Moses, cover him back over. So, verse number 28. Stretch out your hand over the sea, that the waters may come again on the Egyptians. So Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to his strength. When the morning appeared, the Egyptians fled against it, and the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. The waters returned and covered the chariots and the host of Pharaoh. And they came into the sea. There remained not so much as one of them. But the children of Israel walked upon dry land in the midst of the sea. The waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left. And the Lord saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the seashore. In other words, there they were floating. Now, come with me into chapter 15. Chapter 15 here, and verse number 4. Pharaoh's chariots and his host hath he cast into the sea. His chosen captains also are drowned in the sea. But I want you to note verse number 5, because it has to do with a second action of God, or shall we say a third action of God. First action, the sea covered them. Second action, they were allowed to see their bodies above water floating there. Third action, their bodies are going to disappear. God is going to take the floating bodies, and he's going to do what? Verse 5. The depths have covered them. They sank into the bottom as a stone. Now, isn't that interesting? Here they are floating, and all of a sudden, they go down as a stone. Now, what was down underneath the very place, if we're right, what was down underneath the very place where the waters covered them? The gate of the pit. And so God did to them what Leviathan wanted to do to Israel. Now, here's how he did it. Verse number 8. And with the blast of thy nostrils, the waters were gathered together. The flood stood upright as an heap. and the depths were congealed in the heart of the sea. Now, here's the picture. God blasted, it says, with an east wind. Moses then said, is with his nostrils he caused this east wind to happen. And the waters divided. And there was a wall on the right hand and a wall on the left hand. No problem as far as Leviathan is concerned. He is the king of the waters. And here is the opening to the pit. But the key word here is, as they were beginning to come through closer and closer, as Pharaoh was pursuing closer and closer, what did God do to the depths there and the waters on each side? He congealed them. You know what that means in the Hebrew? Turned them to ice. So that, you ever try to open a car door with a key when it's frozen shut? You can't do it. The Leviathan who had the key to hell could not use it, and that's what stirred him up, and that's what made him so mad. Had God just kept the waters flowing, there would have been no problem. But all of a sudden, just when he thought he was going to open the door, God said, we're going to drop this a few degrees, fellas, and shoom, ice on each side, and the depths were right there where the gates to hell froze solid. The rest was dry land, but right there Israel passed over, and those gates could not open up. I can see him there putting the key in and hitting it and getting some de-icer and thawing it and lighting some matches. Man, I can get rid of these guys, but he's not doing it. And all of a sudden, there's the waves roaring and it's boiling over. He's mad. I almost want to say he's mad as a certain geographical location, but I didn't say that. That's where he wanted them to go. He is absolutely furious. And so it says, as we read on down, verse number 10, you did blow with your wind, the sea covered them, and they sank as lead in the mighty waters. Now note the difference. Waters covered, they saw their bodies floating, and all of a sudden, as stone and as lead, they sank to the bottom, right where the gate was. And note something else. You stretched out your right hand, and the earth swallowed them. That's the key. They were taken into the pit. And God did to the armies of Pharaoh exactly what Leviathan wanted to do to the armies of Israel as they were crossing through here. Now, let's go to the book of Psalms, chapter 68. Psalm 68. All right, and we're going to begin reading with verse number 18. And this is really important because of something that Jesus Christ is going to do later on. And we're now going to be able to locate the very place in which he did it. And that is right here in the Red Sea, in the heart of the seas where this gate is. Verse 18. You have ascended on high. You have led captivity captive. You received gifts for men, yea, for the rebellious also. In other words, it's not just for saved people. These gifts are going to be for the rebels, but they're not going to appreciate it. That the Lord might dwell among them. Now, just hold your place here and come to Ephesians. Ephesians chapter 4, we'll come right back here. Now, all of these verses that we're quoting right now and dealing with this issue, we'll get on the cross here in just in issues to come. But right now we're showing you the significance of these animals, and especially Leviathan and the dragon, and how God wounded him. All right? Verse number 8, chapter 4. When Jesus ascended on high, he led captivity captive. Now, what do we say this is? It's when he went to the heart of the earth and took out the good compartment, paradise or Abraham's bosom. He took out the good compartment back up through the shadow of death channel, the tunnel there, out the gates of hell which could not prevail, and straight into the third heaven itself. And in fact, that's what's said. Now he that ascended, but what is it that he also descended first into the lower parts of the earth? He that descended is the same that ascended far above all things. Now, we come back to Psalm 68, and that's just what verse 18 says. He ascended on high, and when he did, he led captivity captive. And Paul lets us know that at that point, he passed from the heart of the earth up through the gates of hell to the third heaven. Now, let's look. Verse 20. He that is our God is the God of salvation, deliverance. And unto the Lord belongs the issues from death. Now, an issue is, something that is critical to a matter, something that is the crux of the matter, the point of the whole thing, or odds between two people. Or an issue is something that comes out of the body. It issues out. Like if there is an infection and you squeeze a wound, the infection issues forth, comes out. Excuse the phrase. I hope you haven't had a big summer and that makes you sick. But that's, you got a pimple and you squeeze it, you got an issue. Okay, now, understanding, putting it in layman's terms here. I'm just kidding. No, putting it in simple language, that's what I was talking. The issues from death, not the issues of death. No, it's different. It's the issues from death. Where is death? Down there. That's where death is. The issue from death is that one group or the other is going to come out from the pit of hell. The other group is going to stay in there and be locked in. Whoever has the keys is the one who can open and close that door and keep people in or let people out. Now note where he associates that. Verse 21. God shall wound the head of his enemies. And verse number 22. I will bring again from Bashan, but I will bring my people again from the depths of the sea. And that's the point. The depths of the sea is where the main gate of hell is located. And when he says, I'll bring them again, where was the first time that he brought them? Where was the first time that captivity was freed, led captive to the other side? When Israel left Egypt as bond slaves through the Red Sea and up to the other side, and there was the pit, and it's a picture of when the gate is going to be opened by Jesus Christ, and believers are going to exit from death, the place of death in the Netherlands. And that's why he says, I did it one time, I want to do it again in exactly the same manner. Just as Israel walked across the door of the pit and up on the other side to the promised land, believers are going to come up out of there and be led by Jesus Christ. He's going to lead captivity captive and take the whole group into the third heaven. Okay? Let's go from here to chapter 88, and we're just about out of time. Chapter 88. Verse 3. Now, here are some things that Jesus Christ is going to think with regard to the cross, and perhaps even say during these times of darkness that's not recorded in the Gospels. For my soul is full of troubles. My life draws nigh to the grave. I am counted with them that go down to the pit. I am as a man that has no strength. Free among the dead, like the slain that lie in the grave, whom thou rememberest no more, when they are cut off from thy hand. For you have laid me in the lowest pit, in darkness, where? In the deeps. Your wrath lies hard upon me, and thou hast afflicted me with all thy ways. Last part of verse number 8, I am shut up, and I cannot come forth. Now, the thing is, Jesus Christ died, and where did his soul go? It went to the lowest parts of the earth. That's the whole point. The gate of hell opened up, and remember, hell has several compartments. He did not go to the fiery part, he went to Abraham's bosom, but Jesus Christ in his soul went down there. The gate closed behind him. He walked through the valley of the shadow of death. He went into the nether parts, or the central part of the heart of the earth, and that's where he stayed. Now, there's one thing as we close this lesson. He didn't stay there long. Because when he died, victor over Lucifer on the cross, and that's one of the key issues there, the keys of death and hell that were once in the hand of Leviathan, Lucifer, were taken from that point by Jesus Christ. And he went on out, he opened the door, and he took captivity captive, slammed the door on those that were there, and locked it. And that's part of, and this is something we'll get into next time, that's part of why he went to the spirits in prison and told them, fellas, been waiting here a long time thinking that I was going to be defeated. I've got news for you. And that is, I've got the keys of death and hell, and you're now going to stay in here forever. But I'm going to take my people out.